Hello everyone, my name is Joost and I am joined here by Erik, and
Hello.
today we're going to run through some patches, the patch notes that were released today I think.
Yeah, they're from
Um,
today.
yeah, and we're gonna quickly run through it, give our opinion on it. Erik here is an ex-Challenger Flex player, so he knows a lot about the game. I myself have peaked in Diamond 2, so we hope to give you some insight if you're curious to League of Legends overall. So let's jump into it. First champion we got here is Bard. Yeah, what do you think of this, Erik? Bard
So what
burst.
we see is Bard's W, his movement speed. Let's see, 50% decay over 1.5 seconds to 30% decaying over 1.5 seconds, and a cooldown of increase of 2 seconds. And his E magical journey is increased from by 4 seconds at level 1 to 2 seconds at level 5. I know Bard. Bard is considered really strong at the higher levels of play, Diamond 2 plus. In Korea especially, he's considered one of the most broken supports right now, which is why we're seeing nerfs on him. I think these nerfs are mainly aimed at the higher level of play. They won't affect lower levels of play, since they're mainly aimed at moving around, macro nerfs instead of micro nerfs.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Uh,
the W won't change anything. Like this change on the movement speed and stuff. It's not Bard is not really used for that anyway. So
I think he is in like the higher levels where it's like this really roam heavy champion.
mhm.
So I think this will definitely in like the higher tier of league, like Diamond 2 Plus, will be significant, and I don't think he will be considered the number one support anymore, and he'll just be a nice mid-ground champion.
Yeah, exactly.
Where I think Bart is supposed to be with his quite quirky kit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is like the biggest part I think of the nerf myself, for like stopping the easy early roams and stuff, because you're never going to level up E, so you're gonna always be stuck with an extra 4 seconds, like until the entirety of the game, basically.
Yeah. Also, you max Q first, right? So
Yeah,
you
exactly.
always have the. No, wait, that actually doesn't scale. Yeah, you always have the W in 14 seconds. That's quite significant.
Hmm.
I think the MS is actually the biggest part.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, let's move on to Cho'Gath, our favorite. Our oh my god, they actually buffed him. What? Riot Games. No.
Right.
Um,
Shall I talk about this first?
yeah, sure. Go for it.
Okay. Okay, so Cho'Gath right now sees some play with the Glacial Augment build. And what they're doing right now is they're buffing the base damage on his E. And the more levels you put into it, like at level 1 it's the same, at level 5 it's 12 extra damage per auto, so you get 3 of these. You deal 36 extra damage when you have 5 points in E. The problem I see with this buff is that the main build of Cho'Gath right now, which is what is called the Hextech GLP 500 and Twin Shadows with Glacial Augment, maxes this ability last. And I think that won't change with this change. So until level. When do you max two abilities? Is that 13? I
Yeah,
think level
yeah, yeah,
13.
13.
Yeah, you'll have two abilities maxed. This does nothing. So that's the main higher level Cho'Gath build. If you play at
Hmm.
like lower levels, where you play Cho'Gath more tank style, you max this ability second. And I think it like let's say where this is more common and more effective build at like goldish elo and below. I think this is nice. I don't think it will make Cho'Gath super broken, but it makes him a bit better as a tank.
Yeah, I think it like enhances his jungle ability as well, because most jungle Cho'Gaths actually go for E second, I think, as well, like tanky ones, giving him like just an extra little bit of stat. It's not huge, but it's a niche thing.
Actually, Jungle Cho'Gath is not a thing I actually thought about. That might actually be quite significant because I think some Jungle Cho'Gaths actually max it first. Let me see if I can find some stats on Jungle Cho'Gath right now. I'm quickly checking. Even I don't have stats on Jungle Cho'Gath, unfortunately, so I can talk about what ability maxes first. But this might be significant for Jungle Cho'Gath. We'll have to probably see what happens.
Yeah, definitely. We'll
Let's.
probably see it down the line, but like the Cho'Gath mid lane is still probably the superior pick for him. But maybe it enables a
I think top
flex.
lane. I think top lane with Glacial Augment is best.
Okay. Yeah, I see it a lot in pro play in mid lane, but this is it's not that huge. It's whatever.
Yeah, it's overall you max E sec or last in those builds anyway, so
Exactly.
there's nothing in higher level of play.
Okay. So we have Fiddlesticks here, and Fiddlesticks has his E damage increased from 70 to 190, and now is 70 to 310, which is a pretty good nerf for or buff for Fiddlesticks in the support lane, um, because he really wants to utilize his poke with his E, so he's probably gonna max it first as well, and getting that little bit of extra damage is pretty nice actually. What do you think,
Yeah.
Erik?
I think so as well. Like Fiddlesticks jungle maxes this ability second, so it will take for some time for this change to matter to Fiddlesticks jungle. I think Fiddlesticks jungle is still stronger than Fiddlesticks support. The main change I think that will happen with this buff is normally Fiddlesticks jungle players were kind of swapping between maxing Q second and maxing E second. They weren't sure what's better. And I think this buff will change it that Fiddlesticks jungle players will always start maxing E second. For the people that do play Fiddlesticks support, this is actually a bit more significant because you max E first, but I still think that's the suboptimal lane for Fiddlesticks.
Yeah, exactly.
Overall,
As we look at win rates,
nice buff.
yeah, if we look at win rates, it's probably jungle that is like exceeding the best. So yeah, this is a pretty good buff actually for Fiddlesticks support. Moving on.
Gnar, he gets a buff, is pickup, this is only boulder toss, this is only Mega Gnar. The cooldown of his boulder gets refunded by 70%, and the damage on his E is increased by quite a significant amount, by 30 at all levels, which is important. First of all, I want to talk about E. It's 30 at all levels, so even though this is an ability you max last, you will feel this buff at every stage of the game. A few things to note, this only goes for Mega Gnar, so these buffs aren't super significant. Gnar currently mainly gets picked as a counter pick to some tanks. For example, it does pretty well into Ornn, which is quite a popular pick right now. I'm not too much of a top lane player, so I'm not sure how much these changes will matter in certain matchups, because I think in the laning phase you tend to be mini Gnar, or you want to be mini Gnar most of the time, and only a small amount of trades will happen in big Gnar, Mega Gnar, so I don't think this will affect his laning phase too much. In his team fight he will do a bit more damage, because he gets to maybe throw an additional Q. But overall, I don't think this will actually change that much.
Yeah, I completely agree with you.
Mainly because it only affects Mega Gnar.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, which I'm kind of happy to see, as you stated earlier, most people in laning phase just kind of want to stay mini Gnar because that's the best way to poke out damage and dish out damage. And now, perhaps, with like this 30 extra damage, with the cooldown refund, I think it might actually be worth in some matchups to actually go in when you're going Mega Gnar, as in, because most of the time it's just like, kind of waiting for it to get over, toss a boulder, and then just not go in. But perhaps now you can play a little bit more aggressive.
I think it especially makes your, now I think a bit more about it, I think it makes your all-in stronger. So I think the moment you get someone close to kill range, these buffs might affect it, but I don't think it will really increase the play rate and win rate of Gnar overall.
Yeah, exactly. Well, moving on, one I've been waiting for, Karthus nerfs, because damn, this champion has been obnoxious for the last patches in jungle. And let's see what Riot Games did to actually nerf him to the ground as he's supposed to. We have a reduction of a total of 10 movement speed of Karthus. To be quite honest, I think this is not that great. I expected more. The thing about Karthus is that he's insanely fast with clearing speed. So what this does do is that he's a little bit more. It makes it more difficult for Karthus to guide his jungle camps, which probably means he's gonna be a little bit squishy early, gonna take a little bit more time for clearing, which is good. So it's not completely bad. But the obnoxious thing still is that he can still, with his abilities, clear the whole jungle, probably like within 4 minutes, reach level 4, 5, 6. and then dish out a lot of damage with his ultimate, and then the game is almost already over when he gets to like farm the hell out of his jungle. So I'm curious what you think, Erik.
I think this nerf is actually bigger than you might think. Yet again, something to state is Karthus is mainly a pick that's picked in the higher elos. Karthus is a lot less effective in the lower elos.
Definitely.
Because he's so squishy and not and unforgiving when making mistakes. And even though you're correct that this doesn't nerf Karthus' strengths, it definitely increases his biggest weakness, which is his immobility.
Mm-hmm.
So if Karthus gets caught or he has to run away from someone, he will be a lot less effective at it. And yeah, MS, movement speed, is one of the hardest stats to come by in the game. Like the only way Karthus gets it is by building boots. Other champions can, for example, build Phage or other movement speed increased items, but Karthus can't. So I think this will allow Karthus to get punished a lot for making mistakes. And especially in the higher eaters, I think this is quite significant, just because how important movement speed is.
I feel like that most Karthuses go for an early Rylai's anyway, so they and with his W slows he will be pretty difficult to like.
Rylai's gets pulled.
I think so with Karthus.
I think Karthus doesn't build Rylai's.
Then I must be mistaken. Perhaps when you're like behind and stuff. But his W is still like a massive slow, and
I'm quickly checking and I'm not seeing a single Rylai's.
Okay.
Players.
I guess my game knowledge is not as good. No, but yeah, I think this definitely matters for like the early game impact, as in like guiding camps. He's like way more susceptible to invades and stuff because he can't really go away that fast. But I think his strength of like being a insane late game carry still stays.
Yeah, I agree. Like his strength is still there. It just his weakness is bigger.
Yeah, exactly. Moving on, Kane.
Alright, moving on to Kane. Let's see what they did to him. His cooldown is his Q cooldown is decreased. His bonus damage now applies to minions, and his W decreasing slow is increased. I'm assuming this is for all forms and not just Rast or his assassin form and his tank form.
Yeah, I think this is for like the one that for not being transformed yet. So like the early game Kane.
Oh, just early game Kane. Okay.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so what we see is a decrease in the Q cooldown, which is also affects obviously his forms. Now applies to minions. Something to note: this applies to minions, so not monsters. Yeah, that applies both to monsters and minions now instead of just monsters.
Mm-hmm.
Which implies that they want to push laning Kane.
I think so, yeah.
Which is interesting. Gives him a bit more wave clear. I don't really see laning Kane happen, so I think this buff does nothing. Basically, and then you see the Q cooldown reduction, which is actually quite big. Like Q is Kane's main form of damage, at least in his basic form, and his tank form. I think his assassin form does it more with W.
Mm-hmm.
And just having like an entire second off of that, which is your most spammed ability, is actually quite big. It will increase his jungle clear, it will increase his dueling potential. So this is actually quite a nice buff. And then the decaying slow from 70 to 90%. So I'm not sure if this is really big. Like if it doesn't really matter if you slow someone for 70 or 90% due to the way slows work.
Yeah.
Like for example, if you slow someone for 99%, you don't actually slow them for 99%. It's the way the math works is a bit weird. But the bigger the slow, the less they increase. So I think this doesn't even increase the slow that much. So I don't think that matters, but I think the Q buff is really nice.
The good thing about it though is like a slow increase makes it that he kind of sticks on you way better. So when you're engaged with a Kane, he can now slow you just a little bit more, and with the Q cooldown decrease, he's just like on you, like spamming Q and stuff. So I think this is actually an overall pretty good skirmishing thing as well.
And I think mainly the Q buff is pretty big.
Especially
I think
the
buff.
Yeah.
Jungle Kane for sure, it will increase his or decrease his clear time, and I'm interested in if this other change is good enough to bring lane kill back, Kane back, but we'll really have to see.
Yeah, we'll have to see.
I can't make predictions about that.
Perhaps stop playing. We'll ask Leon. moving on, we have Lissandra Q cooldown decreased. Lissandra is one of those champions that's kind of in an awkward state at the moment. Erik could probably tell a lot more about it, like where she is in the meta, but I think a cooldown in her Q makes it so she, because it's like on first level it's 2 seconds, which is in my opinion kind of huge. But I think you still max Q anyway as Lissandra, if I'm correct.
Yeah. If you want, I can talk about it.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Because yes, you do max Q first, but one of Lissandra's biggest problems right now is just how long her level 1 and level 2 Q cooldown is. So this is actually quite big. Because 10 seconds on such a simple ability as Ice Shard is pretty nuts. This was nerfed because Lissandra used to be so dominant in the meta. And now she's not anymore. And this actually fixes her main early laning issue. So I think this is quite big. I think like if Lissandra gets out of laning phase or she gets to roam, she's quite powerful, especially in the mid game. So I think this will definitely push Lissandra to be a stronger champion. All elos.
Yeah.
And pro play even.
Yeah, I think
this is quite significant.
Yeah, like she can clear the first few waves a lot quicker now, I guess.
Yeah, I really like this change. I think Lissandra will become more popular because of this.
Yeah, nice. Good to see.
Alright, and then we have Nami. What they did is they reduced her base health and base mana, and they decreased the base movement speed on her passive. Personally, I don't play that much Nami. I think Joost, you play a lot more of Nami, so maybe you can talk about this change?
Okay, yeah, sure. So as a sport main, I get to play a few Nami games as well, and especially against it. And to be honest, most base stat nerfs are not that significant. So we see the health is going down by around 15 HP, and mana is going down by around 10. So this is like almost like a fourth of an, or well, not a fourth of an auto attack, but like a third perhaps of an auto attack. Not that huge in the overall grand scheme of the game. And mana is also not that huge because you're going a lot of mana regen as Nami anyway. Perhaps someone notices like, hey, I'm gonna die just a very small bit faster, but it's overall just rounding down. It's not that big of an impact. But the passive is quite huge, I think. So the movement. So when Nami uses her spell on someone, either herself or an ally, you give that person a burst of increased movement speed, and that has been nerfed from 60 to 45, which is quite significant in the early stages of the game. The passive also scales with AP, so later out in the game it's going to not be that huge anyway, but especially early game trades, you're probably going to notice that you're a little bit less fast when you're going for trades.
Yeah, I agree. Overall, I think the base changes don't matter that much. Probably at like the higher elos, this passive got abused quite a bit. So in laning phase, they will notice it. I think in lower elos, like gold and below, this change doesn't matter at all.
Yeah, exactly. Nami is probably a pretty well-rounded champion for like both high and low elo. But indeed, like the utilization of the passive is probably most of a high elo thing.
Yeah, because it's quite difficult.
Yeah.
Let's go with Quinn.
Ooh, Quinn, spicy. That's been a while.
Yeah, Quinn is a champion I haven't seen in a while. It sometimes gets picked top lane as a bully. She can actually be really disruptive for the game. So what we also see here is that they're also changing her Sanguine Blade. They're in the preview, so which is one of their main items. So this is probably not the only buff she's getting, but it's a 0.25 increased on her near side duration. She's not gonna bully harder or less hard because of this change. This is insignificant.
Me as an ARAM player, when playing against a Quinn, I really hate this ability. So for all those ARAM players out there, getting this on like a bunch of enemies, this is huge. But for normal games, it doesn't matter.
I think the ability is powerful, but I don't think if it matters whether it's 1.5 seconds or 1.75.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's just a minor difference. So, but we'll go to the item. I after this. It's been mentioned here as well. So we're gonna see how in other ways Quinn is gonna be possibly buffed.
Yeah.
Going to Trundle. Trundle is not that much seen. I think I saw a few Korean games with him as a support, but now I'm not sure actually. Doesn't matter too much though. So this is very interesting. It's a nerf. Trundle's ultimate cooldown is increased by 20 seconds, which in my opinion is kind of odd. Trundle's power most of the time is because of his WQ. So basically, his W gives him movement speed and attack speed, and his Q is a very nice auto attack reset that does a lot of damage. And his ultimate, you're gonna like cast every like once every team fight anyway, and now you have to wait an extra 20 seconds for the team fight to happen. But it does matter in the late game, I think. Like in 80 seconds for the 60 seconds, this means you have to wait like 20 seconds for your possibility to do very well in team fights. So yeah, this is definitely noticeable, a noticeable nerf, but it's kind of awkward. What do you think?
But I think like Trundle is was surprisingly good actually in my opinion. We've recently faced it in DCL, and if you draft a comp with multiple tanks, this just makes your tank, this ultimate makes your tank so squishy suddenly, and your team kind of falls apart. So Trundle is surprisingly powerful in the current meta, where tanks are becoming more and more powerful, more and more picked, mainly because of Trundle's ultimate. So I think the ult CD change matters in that aspect. But Trundle's ult is not something you tend to cast on cooldown. So even though it's a 20-second difference, I think this will only really matter in the early stages where it was 120-second cooldown. But later into the game, you will tend to have this up as Trundle in every team fight.
Do you see Trundle being played in jungle or in top lane the most?
Jungle is by far the role. So I think this will matter a bit, because his ult is the main reason he is picked right now. But most of the time you don't cast on cooldown, you tend to have the 20-second spare. So I think the change is not too significant. And I think as long as we keep seeing tanks being more and more popular, I think we keep seeing Trundle across all elos.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I think I agree with you. I'm not too up to date with like the DCL draft and stuff, but it does figure that Trundle's pretty good at the moment. Yeah, Wukong. Whew.
Okay. So Wukong is so strong right now. Like he is quite a must pick or ban champion. He's really strong. He's quite simple to play, which makes him excellent for solo queue. Strong at all levels of play. So let's see what they changed. First of all, they decreased his base armor. They decreased the damage on his Q by 10 on all levels. And his W's clone damage is reduced by 5% at all levels. Overall, this is just a straight damage nerf for Wukong. His damage was just too high. Personally, I don't know if this is enough of a nerf, just because how strong he is right now. Yeah, we'll see a bit less Wukong, but I think he will remain dominant even with these changes.
I think the armor nerf, I'm not sure if Wukong is also played so now and then in the jungle, and it's not his strongest position, but this is probably gonna like cast him out of it, because jungle creeps do physical damage, and as a jungler you'd like to have as much armor as possible. And although 3 armor doesn't sound that huge, it does make like you basically take like 5% extra damage in the jungle in your first clear, which could be the reason for you to either survive the jungle clear or not.
I don't know how healthy how healthy Wukong ends up after his clear, so I'm not sure how much the armor will matter.
No, exactly. We'll probably see later on. We're not mathematicians or like data things, so we can't like calculate how much this will impact. But most of the time when I see an armor decrease, I look at jungle for if it's a possible jungler.
I think the summary, in my opinion at least, I think we will still see Wukong as a quite a dominant pick, just
Yeah.
not as common as big band status as he is right now.
Perhaps a little bit down in the priority ladder.
Yeah.
But those are all the champions, but we should not forget the items. So Sanguine Blade has been changed this patch. The cost of Sanguine Blade has gone from 1100 gold to 1000 gold, and his attack damage is actually increased. So this is interesting. This seems like a pretty powerful buff.
Yeah. It is currently being built by a few lane bullies, quite noticeably Kalista top lane.
Oh
We
no.
haven't seen any Kalista nerfs, and Kalista top, and especially in pro play, is super powerful. Yeah, this buffs that strategy. So I think this will actually increase the amount of Kalista we will see in pro play and high elo. In lower elo, I think we'll see it a bit less because it's just yet again a very unforgiving strategy when you make mistakes, so it tends to be less effective in the lower elos. Besides that, it's not built too often. It's built by Quinn, as mentioned before, which tends to fulfill a similar role as Kalista, just a bit simpler. So I think in terms of the lower elos, like Quinn top gets quite a reasonable nerf buff. My bad. But besides that, I'm not sure what other champions build Sanguine Blade.
Perhaps we will see it a little bit more often now, because like 100 gold, it's like the gold efficiency is like off the roof now probably.
Yeah, this is a super gold efficient item if when you're split pushing.
Yeah.
So maybe champions like Trundle will start building this. Some Twitch jungles also build it, but most of the champions tend to be cheesy and not very popular. So, yeah, I think some lane booties. We might see a bit lane booties like Kalista and Quinn, but the item doesn't really fit in the type of meta we have right now, or like the playstyle.
No, exactly.
So
You kind of want to. I mean, early game you can probably like fight tanks a little bit better, but anyway, I mean tanks are just gonna outscale you anyway. So
yeah, this item's efficiency is insane with the amount of gold and the stats it gives, especially when you're alone. But I just don't think that type of playstyle has a place in the meta right now. So I think this item will still be underappreciated. But the moment we're going to shift to a more split push meta, this item is gonna be insane.
yeah, and it's probably gonna
So
see another nerf.
so even though we might not see a dispatch when it got buffed, this buff might become super relevant in like 2 or 3 patches.
Exactly. Good that you point that out there. Um, yeah, well that's it for items. Aaron balance changes probably not matter too much.
I'm not gonna talk about ARAM changes.
No, exactly. We have Essence Emporium. I have no clue what that is. Is that a?
It's the Blue Essence shop.
Yes. Okay, there we go. Well, if any of you have 100,000 blue essence in shop, make sure to get that. What is it? That skin, that Earth Warwick thing, right?
Earth Warwick, yeah.
Yeah. So make sure to get that one. With some bug fixes and quality of life changes and skins. Erik, what do you think about this?
Okay, so we have it's the Fun Plus Phoenix skin line, who won World last year. We see some skins for Thresh. I think this is Vayne, Malphite, Lee Sin, and Gangplank.
Yes, correct.
I've seen the animations. The animations look really nice, but I don't really play any of these champions, so
Oof. As a
maybe
Thresh
it's
main,
not
I
too
can say this looks pretty nice. This actually looks like a
Ooh.
really, really nice skin.
And they also get the chromas as well. So
Yeah, I think this
the
is
chromas. I
overall-
think the chromas look better than the skin.
Yeah, now that you say it, yeah, actually pretty decent. This one is just very confusing to me. This one, like this Malphite skin, looks like it's basically a Blitzcrank or a Rumble.
Looks like an airplane to me.
I can never play. So yeah, pretty solid. Skin set. It's a shame that it's not G2, but oh well. Maybe another chance this year's Worlds. But I think that's. Are we gonna do a quick recap? We have Bard being nerfed, which is especially going to be noticeable in the high elo. We got Cho'Gath getting some base stat damage extra increased. Fiddlesticks might actually come to support. Gnar is gonna have some more all-in potential. Karthus is gonna probably have a tougher early game and clearing speed, and it's gonna be a lot less mobile. Kane laning? Question mark. Lissandra finally good in the early games at least with clearing minions. Nami might have some like small nerf, not going to be huge. Quinn combined with Sanguine Blade is probably going to come to the top lane, and especially in low elo. Trundle nerf, not that significant, but it's gonna matter when you want to fight early as a Trundle against tanks. And finally, Wukong getting his nerf after a few patches, which is very good to see. So, thank you all for watching. I hope this is kind of a tryout, but we hope you enjoyed it, and we very much appreciate the feedback if you have any. So yeah, this is Joost, and Erik, do you want to say anything to the people watching?
I just thanks for watching and stay safe.
Stay safe.